Can you hear us?
Yeah,
I can hear you. This is Brian. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Hi, and welcome to the third segment of Qualcomm's Future of series. This time around, we're going to be talking about the future of 5G beyond smartphones. I'm excited to be here with three expert panelists today and discuss what the future beyond 5G smartphones is. Let's start with some introductions.
Thanks, Bevan. My name is Alex Gatuzian. I'm the SVP and GM of the Mobile Compute and Infrastructure Business Unit here at Qualcomm.
Thanks, Bevan. I'm Durga Maladi. I'm a SVP and GM for 5G mobile and infrastructure, mobile broadband and infrastructure at Qualcomm.
Nice to see you. And hi, Brian. How about you?
Hey, Bevan. I'm Brian Meekum, and I work at Verizon. And I lead our device technology team for 5G, as well as sports innovation and mobile edge compute. And I work very closely with both Alex and with Durga. So it's great to be here with all three of you.
I think it's fair to say that at this point, when people hear 5G, their first thought is their smartphone or their 5G mobile connection. Yeah. So Alex, as we look to the future, what kind of are the next implementations of 5G that we're going to see?
Sure. Well, first of all, 5G mobile phones are they're compute devices with mobile connectivity. So many people are relying on the capabilities of the smartphone now that we've gone through the pandemic and work from home is a norm. And now we have telepresence, we have telehealth. We are using the tool as a productivity. So the 5G connection is a must-have. So you can connect from anywhere securely. And then the multiple pieces of technology on a compute side, for compute, for AI, for security, for camera, for video, are all top-notch processing capabilities that we have that are embedded into the smartphone. But then 5G stretches way beyond that and into multiple different industries. For example, automotive and industrial and automation of industrial sites and healthcare and industrial IoT. There's so many different applications. We're Qualcomm and 5G, we're kind of creating the intelligent edge where billions of devices will now get connected to the network. And communications is going to be a key piece of what people are going to be using in multiple different applications going forward. So 5G reaches way beyond the smartphone.
It has to be more about speed then, probably, too. So, Durga, maybe you could talk to us, as 5G matures and it goes into these other applications, what are some of the key capabilities we're going to be seeing?
So the way I see it is that we are in year 3 of 5G, starting from the early 2019 timeframe when the first launches happened. And at this point in time, 5G is gradually permeating into multiple sectors of the industry. And when you start thinking about beyond speed, what is it that you actually expect from 5G? So this is like a preview of what's coming up and what's a little bit down the pipeline, even from standardization process. There's an increasing emphasis of 5G technology and wherever there are needs for reliability and latency. Like when you need something as an ultra-reliable link, something that's mission critical, 5G actually handles that extremely well. Ultra-low latency for some of the manufacturing applications, healthcare applications, and so on, very valuable. Going a little bit further down, as 5G has been deployed in multiple regions, there's still an emphasis on improving the overall coverage of 5G, especially when you want to set up a 5G site wherever you want and you might not have the right kind of a backhaul. So the whole notion of integration of access and backhaul to improve the nationwide coverage of 5G is another key piece of the technology that's coming up. As we go down into the standardization process, into the next phase, this is the second phase of 5G, so as you go into the third phase of 5G, or the third release of 5G, what we expect to see is 5G going down into the low-tier segments when you're talking of, let's say, 5G-enabled wearables, 5G-enabled AR glasses. Think of all these devices that are still emerging at this point in time, but what you can do when you have 5G connectivity as a part of it. And so that notion of reducing the capability of 5G to fit into those devices, but at the same time trying to make sure that you have cloud connectivity natively built in all the time. So this is another piece of the technology that's coming in further down. Interestingly, as you take a look at overall 5G applications, everywhere in terrestrial networks. In this third phase, which is also release 17 of 5G, there's applications of 5G even over satellite. So there's lots of places where 5G is actually coming up. Bottom line is that as a technology, 5G is now going into so many different sectors that these technology elements will be put together both in the networks and devices to make sure that these industries get enabled.
So kind of going off that, in the early days of 5G, in developing these use cases, Verizon has kind of helped foster with setting up 5G labs across the country, and some focused on different areas. Can you, Brian, kind of tell us some of the most interesting success stories you've seen so far, particularly for businesses?
Durga and Alex laid a nice groundwork there. They basically referenced that with 5G, we have so much more capacity with the number of devices, with the edge computing capacity, and then that low latency, the speed with which you can communicate with so many devices back and forth. And so Verizon has really enjoyed our partnership with Qualcomm. As Durga references these releases and things that are coming out, there's just so many features and so much horsepower that we just didn't have with 4G. So, thanks to Qualcomm for helping to pioneer that. And then our partnership around millimeter wave, where we're just really going out trying to get to as much coverage and get 5G deployed as much as possible. We've seen amazing things. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of the things we've done so far is around sports. And with sports, we just couldn't handle the kind of high definition, low latent, real-time video that we can now. And so today in the NFL, there's quite a few franchises where when you go to the game, you can pick up your phone and you can watch the game with 7 different angles. So think about sitting maybe up in a high seat, or think about you're sitting in your seat, but you don't have the angle you want to see the end zone just right. With Multiview, a product on Verizon through the NFL, we are able to deliver real-time video. Now, when I say real-time, I mean millisecond latency. Because if you're watching the game, and heaven forbid that the fans start cheering and you're taking a quick look to see a different angle and you miss the play because it's laggy, that would be awful. So the experience is real-time. You can watch it and you can see what's happening at the same time it's happening on the field, but just in a different angle. And then you can do replays, and we can overlay statistics and information about the players. And that's something that fans really enjoy. So think about, you're there, you're not sure if there was a holding or the person stepped out of bounds, but you want to hit that replay button and take a look. It's so much more personal now, and you can control things from your device you just couldn't do over 4G. So that's one use case that we're super excited about. And then the next one comes down to putting technology in for the benefit of improving something like a sports team. And we've done that with an NBA team. And in their practice facility, we have been able to give them tracking, performance management, and that's wrapped into a team management layer so that they can tell their players, and I have some use cases, where they can actually tell their players that, hey, your shooting has gone down due to this injury. We need to take a little time off. And NBA players are very stubborn, and most pro sports players are. They don't want to back away from practicing. They think that that's going to make them weaker. And there was a scenario last year where a player was actually told, you got to take a break and let your, something heal. And they did, and then it made such a difference in the playoffs. So I just think when you have the kind of power that can come from edge computing and real-time information and being able to track and give all of that back to somebody in a sports environment, makes such a difference for the team, such a difference. And that's technology affecting humans that it just hasn't been able to in the past. So we're pretty excited for what 5G is bringing.
So when you're talking about something I've heard, and I'm sure we all have, is the pandemic has highlighted this need for connectivity. But so when we're talking about industries and how 5G can transform in the future, Alex, can you talk about how maybe it can help really drive these business changes post-pandemic?
Yeah, of course. So as the digital transformation starts to happen, and you see it in all different sectors, and every intelligent device, if it's intelligent, it's connected to the network. So with these changes, transformation starts to occur in multiple different sectors of the economy. And so therefore, there'll be profound effects of increased jobs in different sectors, different applications, savings that are going to be profound. For example, if you look at the automotive industry, as autonomous driving becomes a norm, cars have to communicate with each other, communicate with the telecommunication systems around. They have to know exactly what's happening for safe driving environments. they're gonna connect to cameras. They're gonna connect to multiple different sections of the road. You look at different industries such as energy. They can figure out and sense if there's any issue or hazard with power lines. It could prevent fires. Farmers could have multiple different products in their community to try to figure out how to best grow crops, increase productivity there. So there's huge amounts of impact across the economy, as well as we've worked with Accenture and IHS as a market study. There's some incredible numbers that are floating around. For example, by 2035, they're estimating $13 trillion of sales increase because of 5G. And another set of numbers that are amazing, 16 million jobs being created in the US economy, and $1.5 trillion being added to the GDP because of 5G. So you see there's so much impact in so many different sectors, starting with mobile and then spreading out to all these different industries, creating jobs, creating safety, creating different applications. And our partners like Verizon together with us, will take advantage of these things and bring a better life for all the consumers and workers around the world.
Spectrum is obviously an important aspect, and I think at this point we have different low band, mid band. With Verizon, you have your C band, and then you've also taken kind of a forefront on millimeter wave, really pushing that. And so, Brian, I'm curious, what do you think, why should businesses really consider 5G millimeter wave when they're looking for these business transformations versus other forms of traditional connectivity?
Yeah, great question, Bevan. I think that businesses are considering the level of capacity that they need, the level of response time. Durga mentioned some manufacturing examples, but just imagine, if you will, where people need to have intelligence, information gathered, IoT, things that are where there's not a human involved, but they want sensing and they want manufacturing and information delivered autonomously so that the humans can make decisions, so that humans have the ability to react faster and gather up information. And you just don't get that through traditional means of Wi-Fi, 4G, or other technologies. With 5G, and I think you referenced some of the different bands that are out there, when you have the 5G capability that comes from millimeter wave, and that we will have with our C-band deployment that we're going to put out very soon at Verizon, you get a scale and capability that wasn't anticipated before. And so I think businesses are really interested in being able to take on more. I think Alex mentioned that as well, where they can handle more capacity, or they can respond faster, or they can save lives faster if you're a first responder, or you can take on driving that gets more people in more places because of the 5G intelligence that's out there. And so I think that 5G is still young and people are learning about it, but I see a lot of businesses catching on and detecting that there's so much more they can do now. We're kind of right at the beginning of it all. So I'm just excited for businesses to grow into it.
What about governments? I mean, governments are looking to their infrastructure. Durga, maybe you can jump in on this one here, but why should governments around the world globally really seriously consider 5G when they want to secure and modernize their own infrastructure?
I think based on everything that you've heard so far, one should really start thinking of 5G not so much as a purely consumer-centric technology only, but it goes way beyond that, and it's more of an operational technology. And as 5G begins to transform a large number of industries, and you take a look at what kind of industries are these, this could be the agriculture sector, the education sector, manufacturing sector. And when you start thinking about some of these sectors, you can clearly see that government does have a role over there from a perspective of setting the right policies in place and actually utilizing 5G as a technology for its own needs. So if you think about the way that a lot of the data that gets harnessed as a part of this entire process by the government, it's important to see that if the government is now involved in, there's a new kind of an energy grid that's coming up. There's tons of data that you can build that energy grid based upon 5G. Similarly, the water grid, the transportation grid, when you have vehicles communicating with the infrastructure around them, the networks around them, and with each other, you can think of the transformation that can occur in the transportation industry. And that's another place where policymakers, regulators, spectrum allocators, and those who are in the business of actually running some of these sectors by themselves have to pay attention. So in that sense, the government is increasingly interested in first understanding what 5G as a technology can do, how it can improve a lot of the sectors in which they're already there, how it can actually improve things further. And then, as a part of that whole discussion, have their own views in terms of, well, we want to make sure that this is also a secure technology, something that can be relied upon. Because when we talk of these different grids that I was mentioning, the utility grids, there's always an element of making sure that the security is maintained the right way. So from a government perspective, it's not just important to pay attention to the technology, but also get directly involved in it as they start adopting it for all these different segments in which they're involved in.
I know we covered a lot of ground here, but I'd like to just kind of wrap up with maybe a quick 1-minute answer from everybody out of all of the 5G capabilities and features, either current or coming down the pipeline. What's most exciting to you and why? And maybe just a quick 1 minute from each person. Alex, do you want to start off?
Sure. I think maybe if I just tackle the products that people actually use. I think the next generation of computing is going to move into XR, extended reality. And the exciting part about that is not only is compute, but it's also communicating between itself and the cloud. And it'll use intelligent connection to bring services, different services and compute capabilities and entertainment and health and fitness across multiple different users. And so I think 5G use cases in that sense, plus AI, very, very interesting use cases for multiple consumers to use. That's an exciting area that Qualcomm is leading in, and with our assets, we can grow that industry quite a bit.
There you go.
So Alex touched upon XR, which is a fascinating subject in itself, and in fact, it's really big. But I was going to actually mention, in addition to that, probably the usage of ultra reliability, because at some sense, when we think of 5G as a wireless connectivity, and you start thinking about everywhere you see a wire and you want to replace that, well, one of the nice things about a wire is actually it's a pretty reliable connection. And so if we are in the business of actually removing those wires and going to wireless, you really want to have ultra reliable communications. And once you start thinking along those lines, there are different kinds of applications that come out from there, whether it's in digitizing the manufacturing sector or actually relying upon that in healthcare, where a lot of the remote diagnostics along with any other healthcare application that comes along the way. So looking forward to that. It's a long haul when it comes to reliability, but it's a very important endeavor, and Qualcomm is heavily invested in that.
And cars.
And vehicles. They communicate with each other with that level of reliability for safety applications.
That's right.
Brian, what about you?
Alex and Durga laid the technical foundation. I'm going to rely on my role where I work in device and have listeners think about that. The power of the experience is going to change. That ultra reliable, low latency, and that foundation of the technology deployed will make it so that right now I feel like we're having this two-dimensional experience through this call that we're having and the way we're broadcasting. But imagine if we could create an augmented reality that felt 3D, that it's like we were sitting in the room together. That experience is going to make a difference for families. That experience is going to make a difference in relationships, because the world has changed, and I don't think it's going back to the way it was. And I think that 5G is going to allow us to connect in a way that we hadn't anticipated before. That's going to make it much more personable and a lot more fun. And if you have that, then you have people who are maybe they can't travel, or people who are sick, but they want to be able to still be together and in the same room. And I think that's coming on 5G pretty soon. I just also think that the ability to get information to people who need it. You think about people who didn't have access to the internet years ago. Think about having specialty services delivered over 5G because you have a doctor or something in a vehicle that can just do something it couldn't do before with 5G. That's what I'm excited about. I'm excited for changing people's lives.
A lot of things to be excited about. Well, thank you all. This has been a great discussion and exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. I hope we can all get together soon safely together, or maybe in a different form of virtual setting. Who knows? Soon to be seen. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Bevan.
Thanks, Brian.
Brian.
Thanks, Bevan.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah.
Thank you.